Chapter 13. I only approached the table after Shabana promised to wait for me in the hall.
Ah, Miss Tess.
My knees quaked with trepidation. Here I'd sat in my first class at the academy, the gift of attendance presented to me by people who'd saved my life from the snows when they'd had no obligation to do so, and I'd blown the opportunity almost immediately by insinuating I had any concept as to my first teacher's magical limitations when compared to his assistant. "I'm sorry, Master Miswell." I half knelt. "I didn't mean to imply you lacked I don't know, magical prowess? No, that's not it. Magical knowledge. I'm so sorry."
Tess?
I raised my head to find a soft expression molded onto his wrinkled face. He stroked his beard, then leaned on the table.
Are you under the impression I'm displeased?
"Well, yes. My mouth prefaced my mind and—" He raised a hand, showing me the deep wrinkles in his palm.
Tess, be at ease. I didn't call you here to admonish you out of some sense of ego. I just wanted to set eyes on one such as yourself up close, to discuss your future.
My future? He nodded with emphasis.
Indeed. Did my words fail to lend the appropriate weight of your blessings? Or your luck, if you prefer?
Well, yes, I suppose.
No, you don't. But that's fine. It actually pleases me you have no concept of your potential because it means you are a blank page upon which to be written.
My jaw clenched. And who would write the appropriate words on my page? A smile escaped from beneath his wiry white beard.
Why, you would, Tess. Come, sit for a moment. I promise not to keep you from your next class.
He paced to one of the desks and gestured for me to sit next to him. I left one chair empty between us.
You have the potential to become a very powerful magician, but you shouldn't expect it to be easy. I don't say this because you'll find it exceptionally difficult to learn magic, but because your potential is limitless. With such a high threshold, you could learn to weave from the ley lines flooding far below us. That is to say, you could create your own spells.
Create my own? What? He nodded.
This is really a topic for the advanced, fourth-year curriculum we've designed for those who graduate as third years. And that assumes we can locate students with high enough magic potentials and affinities. It's new even to us. You see, there was an event.
I nodded. Master Mora told me.
Ah.
Again he nodded.
The fourth-year curriculum is a responsibility visited only upon those who wish to share knowledge with first-years and who would practice advanced magic in a laboratory environment as well as in the wilds. Third-year students will have the options to go their own ways or join the Academy's defense forces. But you, well, if you reach your potential, Solara's kingdom is the limit. So I hope you'll forgive my intrusion. I just wanted to make sure, before you left your first class, you know I'll be watching you. We all will.
My forehead crinkled up before I could suppress it. Watching me?
Oh, don't let it put you off. It's not like we need to babysit. You are 17, yes? A woman grown. So you will forge your own destiny. We will assist in molding you to become what you desire.
He raised a finger.
But Tess, you must take these gifts seriously. Even as a light caster, you will learn offensive spells that could cause severe damage to your enemies, or your friends. Since you seem bent on hiding your other affinity, I will keep your secret.
A chill whispered through my shoulders, then down my arms until my fingertips became numb. I wanted to ask how he'd known, but he continued talking as if he hadn't raised the subject, and I took that as a signal my secret was safe.
We will help you control your magic, but you must begin with the knowledge that it can do harm and cost you everything if misused.
I nodded. I understand.
Good.
He rose.
The fundamentals of magic will teach you how the world works. You'll learn about mana and other energy sources, but you will not learn about control. Your next class will eventually involve combat training. It will be stringently supervised, and it's a good thing.
He chuckled.
Why, when you learned Smite, you could very well punch a hole in someone's temple. I suppose this is why we use duels.
This does not make me feel better. He waved a dismissive hand.
Worry not. Just seek assistance in those times you have doubts. Your demeanor in the seats on high was that of a recluse, someone who wasn't eager to respond to my queries. I respect that, but you should overcome your shyness, and I will help.
He led me to the door.
We will all help.
So you will tell the others of my potential?
Yes. This is not optional. But since you chose the School of Light, I will keep your other secret under my hood.
I eyed Shabana, who leaned against a wall outside with her sack thrown over one shoulder. But then I stopped. The wrinkles of age cast in waves across his forehead deepened as his bushy eyebrows arched. He twisted his lips the slightest bit to one side, an expression of contemplation that brought memories of my father to bear. I pushed away a sudden punch of loss in my gut. The shrewd master spoke as if he read my thoughts.
The School of Shadow is taught by excellent teachers, but shadow can be a dangerous discipline when wielded by untrustworthy hands, or those susceptible to the temptations of evil in this world.
His eyes brightened, then the eyebrows relaxed.
Thank goodness we don't have that problem since you've chosen the light.
He patted my shoulder gently, then gestured for me to pass through the door.
Get to your next class.
I was just about to thank Shabana for waiting when he spoke from behind.
Unless there's something you're not telling me.
It wasn't quite a question. I turned, forced a flat expression onto my features, then shook my head. He nodded, then returned to the classroom. What was all that about? Shabana asked as we paced down the long corridor. It seems I've garnered unwanted attention. In what form? She grabbed my hand to keep me from continuing along, then pulled me toward a spiral staircase leading to the next floor. I gripped the iron rail and followed. Master Miswell is going to tell the other instructors about my potential. When Roshan took me to Dicini to announce the score, I thought perhaps she was just trying to make me feel good about myself. Because she's like that, you know? Shabana cackled in a strange laugh that resonated with clicks in her throat. If you'd seen Roshan before she took over the temple, you might not think so. When that woman gets a crazy inkling about someone disrespecting the will of the goddess, she'll burn them down. Even if only verbally. Oh, I can't imagine that. Then take my word for it. She shuffled up the stairway, skipping steps in a dexterous motion that dizzied me. Well, it seems she was being sincere. I would say so. You just painted the target on your back. You think so? Ha! Yeah, but don't worry. Jealousy abounds. It's not your problem what others think. She paused in her ascent, then peered down at me. Stick with me, and no one will mess with you. Shabana leaned close. Or I'll beat them with my staff. Somehow I believed her. When we reached the top of the stairs, she came to a sudden halt. After squeezing past her, I saw why. A young man with reddish hair and a chiseled jaw stood just past the entrance to the stairwell, and I recognized him from earlier. He'd been the one to hustle forward to catch up with his bigoted friend.
Hey.
He lowered his gaze to the ground, then up again.
I just wanted to apologize for Johan. I heard what he called you, but I didn't want you to think just because I was walking with him that I think that way. I think it's great they've opened the academy to all races. Earlier, I even spotted an elf and heard rumor we have a master who is one.
Shabana nodded. I won't associate you with his bigotry then. Thank you. He extended his hand.
I'm Elren Zen.
Shabana shook it, then he offered it to me. I grasped it like Luli had shown me the night before, then gave it a firm shake.
That's quite a grip you have there, Tess. Were you an iron worker before you came to the academy?
A smile bloomed to reveal a perfect set of ivory teeth. An unfamiliar warmth circulated through my appendages. I lived on a farm with my father.
Ah, I bet you have a solid strength attribute.
I raised one shoulder in a shrug. Maybe.
Well, look, a few of us are meeting after second class today. If you two would like to join us and think you can stomach Johan's company, I'd love to have you.
Shabana glanced at me, then nodded. Sure, where?
In the field on the temple side. We're up for a little adventure if you are.
Shabana mewed. Sounds interesting. I wasn't so sure it did. The surroundings at the academy, high spires, sprawling interior, and regal designs, proved plenty intimidating themselves. But the noise was starting to weigh on me in a unique and disturbing way. In Warrington on the thoroughfare, the sights and sounds of bustling activity had intrigued me. I'd never seen so many people. In fact, I'd rarely seen anyone but my father since he didn't even allow me to accompany him on his trade journeys to the towns in the Guinness Peaks. Put all together, the idea of sitting around with these boys, men, whatever, struck me as proving grounds for intimidation, especially since one of them had just called my friend a beast earlier. It wasn't the use of the word so much as the way he'd said it. A dark enthusiasm had stretched the single syllable into a sustained offense. Unschooled as I was in social propriety, I might have been overreacting. And if Shabana wasn't intimidated by the prospect of sharing Johan's company, my own offenses should be set aside.
So, will you come?
Elrenzen said. Something in the softened features of his face elicited a nod.
Great.
His eyes ticked up and to the right.
Guess we'd better get to class.
He hustled ahead, and I fell in next to Shabana as she strode behind, then followed him inside. This class was designed with the same tiered seating as earlier, but our preferred seats in the rear were taken. It surprised me, as I'd have expected people to select the same seats in a room so resembling the last. Since it hadn't worked out like that, we climbed to the rear and sat on the side farthest from them. The one who'd called Shabana a beast, Johan, had taken his same seat in the front row closest to the door. We passed him and the friend who'd greeted us in the hallway outside, but I spared neither a glance. A strange chill coursed through my neck, and I found myself wanting for my staff, despite my lack of training with the weapon. Stop being ridiculous. No one is going to hurt you here. When the class settled, a side door, this time on the right, eased slowly open. The hinges squeaked, and then a tall, thin man appeared. His sun-bleached hair appeared nearly white and fell straight to his shoulders. Although short, the tips of his ears swept up into sharp points. I contrasted them to the longer ones the candle-wielding Giles had back at the burrow. He spread his hands out to his sides, palms up, at shoulder height. His voice was steady, his diction perfect. Every syllable, each consonant pronounced.
Good tidings to you, first class of Warrington Academy. My name is Joran Ranard, servant of the Queen Samancia, and your instructor for constitutional development.
Shabana nudged my elbow. Ranard, he must be one of Giles's cousins. Giles? I whispered. The one who brought me the candle yesterday morning? You know another Giles? Unlike Master Miswell, Renard circled to the rear of the marble-topped table, then sat on a stool so high I could see his bent knees. He gazed toward us in the back.
Yes, Giles. If you want to be respectful, I suppose you'd call him Prince Renard.
He raised an index finger.
And before you ask the obvious follow-up as to the chances I could end up having to return to the Queen's Forest to perform royal duties, Giles is my distant cousin, and I'm 237th in line to the Queen's throne, so unless someone wipes out a whole elven race, I guess you're stuck with me for the duration.
Shabana slapped a hand to her mouth. I wondered if enhanced hearing was a requirement for instructors, and if it might be a spell like Inner Illumination. The elf, however, moved on.
If you'll allow me a moment, I wish to commit your names to my interface.
The elf winked his eyes in succession, then scanned each row of students in rapid succession.
Good. Now I have your shining faces right here.
Master Joran explained the rules of his classroom and those involving access to him, and we found they followed the pattern of Master Miswell's utterances. A student in the front yawned, while another fiddled around in her bag for something. Master Joran twirled a finger in the latter's direction.
Miss Rona, please tell me you have snacks to share with all of us in that bag.
Her head shut up. Huh? A smile crept across the elf's features, smoothing them out in a way that made him seem much younger.
I am here to teach you constitutional fundamentals. Nothing in your bag will aid you in the pursuit of the knowledge I impart. Please focus on my every word, lest you miss something important.
The elf slipped off the stool without awaiting a response. When he spoke again, his tone was louder, and his voice echoed off the rear wall backing the top row of the tiered seating.
What you will learn here will save your life. Pay heed to it, and perhaps you will survive the conflicts many of you will face. While we don't expect all of you will qualify for the Academy Defense Forces, the Milbury Regiment, or...
He tilted his chin down and set his eyes on a girl I hadn't noticed in the second row, whose ears curved into points of their own.
The Queen's regiments. Conflict has spread throughout eastern Rubal, and you might someday find yourselves in a dangerous situation where what you learn here will prove the difference between life and death.
His lips curved into a wry smile.
Who knows? Maybe you'll even end up in one of the new adventurer guilds popping up all over Rubal.
He circled to the front of the table.
First, I'll allow a moment for your questions.
He spread his hands out again, this time an invitation. Words from somewhere below were muttered, so I only caught the end of the question.
And up at the Academy for Human Magicians?
I leaned forward to see who'd spoken. The elf's expression didn't change.
Please stand and introduce yourself to your fellow students. Then restate your question with some measure of confidence. After all, if you're going to be intentionally insulting, you should own your disposition.
I wasn't surprised in the least when Johan stood and introduced himself. He did it with a sound confidence that put me ill at ease. Then he repeated his question.
How did an elf end up at the Academy for Human Magicians?
The audacity of the question, considering he'd also called my friend a beast, caused my upper lip to curl into a snarl. Master Joran nodded, interlocked his fingers behind his back, then paced toward the windows.
Thank you, Johan. You may take your seat.
After he complied, the elf lowered his chin.
Your classmates' sentiments aren't uncommon, and while he knows very well this academy no longer follows the racist attitudes imposed out of compliance with the king's edicts of many ages ago, I'm sure he's not alone in his thoughts.
I was suddenly reconsidering the plan to meet with Johan and Elrin after class. The idea an instructor might look out that huge window to find me in proximity to such a cretin brought the lump back to my throat. But I also didn't want to disappoint the one friend I'd made since fleeing home. Curses flooded my mind over the conflict. Master Joran pivoted.
But it should be made clear, there will be no tolerance for offenses against people of different races, even by the son of the High Chancellor of Trowsby. Are my words transparent enough, Johan?
Yes,
he growled. Then Elrin surprised me when he shoved his friend's shoulder. Johan raised his chin and spoke more clearly.
Yes, Master Joran.
Thank you.
The elf leaned against the table.
Now, if there are no other questions, let's discuss the purpose of this class.
No questions were voiced.